Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are tackling an absolutely massive issue in the modern corporate world. We're talking about continuous change. Now, are we just managing this messy soup of corporate buzzwords, or can we actually design real, working, operational flow? It's a huge debate, isn't it? We literally hear this term constantly. Leaders demand it, but let's be real, teams are exhausted by it. So we're going to unpack exactly what is happening beneath the surface here. Here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll break down the continuous change dilemma. Then, we'll look at Ron Leeman's take on the ambiguity problem, followed by Dr. Reg Butterfield's view on the structural design flaw. After that, we'll contrast these two brilliant viewpoints. And finally, map out a coherent way forward. So, let's jump right in. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, the continuous change dilemma. Ron Leeman poses this really foundational, almost Socratic challenge to us. What do we really mean when we call it continuous change? And honestly, this ambiguity carries real consequences. Teams lose focus, priorities blur, accountability just sort of fades away. You've likely felt that exact frustration yourself, dealing with endless corporate jargon and constantly shifting goals. Because think about it, if change never actually ends, can we really keep treating it like a series of temporary interventions? Leeman hits the nail on the head here. He points out that change management is, well, a fragmented mess. In reality, it's often just serial change, dressed up as continuous change. And he is so right. A rolling list of temporary projects does not actually equal embedded adaptation. Every single initiative still carries a start date, a budget, and a closure report, right? That's not continuity. That's just continuous project delivery. The actual work continues long after that closure report is filed away. Right. Let's move on to Section 2, Leeman's take on the ambiguity problem. Leeman brilliantly clusters all this chaos into three overlapping realities. So first, organizations run a rolling pipeline of initiatives and programs, which gives the illusion of ongoing change. Second, they hold this grand aspiration for organizational utility. And third, they mount a reactive response to external market disruption. Now, here's the kicker. Most organizations are dealing with all three of these simultaneously. The confusion is literally structural. You've got different professional disciplines trying to answer entirely different questions, but they're all using the exact same label. And this brings us to the absolutely crucial point, the human dimension. It's a part we so often gloss over, isn't it? If change is genuinely continuous, when do people stabilize? When do those new behaviors actually become embedded habits? You see, continuous disruption often just leads to change fatigue. People simply cannot operate effectively in a state of perpetual transition. If everything is changing all the time, well, nothing is ever truly adopted. The label just becomes a really convenient excuse for poor prioritization. Let's shift gears a bit. Section 3, Butterfield and a design flaw. Now, what's really interesting about this perspective is the profound pivot in thinking. Dr. Reg Butterfield defines continuous change not as a management puzzle to solve, but as an organizational condition to design for. That is a real game changer. The issue isn't linguistic at all. It's a structural design flaw. Continuous change is not something organizations just choose to do. It's the norm. The real gap in our conversation lies in where we're actually looking for the answers. Butterfield argues that the friction really appears when organizations apply traditional project structures and adoption models to solve what is essentially an evolution challenge. Traditional management models tend to treat micro-adjustments as insignificant, right? So they defer them. They defer them until the pressure mounts and the accumulation forces this massive reactive program. But by the time those formal structures finally engage, the organization has already paid a massive price. The informal networks have already absorbed the cost in the form of rework, deep frustration, and lost trust. Moving right along. Section 4, contrasting the two perspectives. Let's look at a concrete example to put this into perspective. There's a stark contrast when we look at the electric vehicle market. Western EV manufacturers typically follow structured development models, like the engineering V model. So authority is heavily concentrated in management layers. Escalation is required for even everyday approvals, and development cycles stretch across 4 to 7 years. Physical testing only validates decisions long after they're actually made. Now, contrast that with Chinese EV manufacturers. They approach the exact same requirements but through integrated workflows. Frontline engineers initiate adjustments naturally, no waiting around for hierarchical approval. The capability is distributed and development is compressed to just 18 to 24 months. It's wild. Designing for distributed capability clearly beats designing for management control. As we see here, speed follows coherence.
So let's break this down side by side. Butterfield's systemic design principles actually serve as a direct answer to Leeman's very pragmatic concerns. Look at this. Where Leeman sees change fatigue and constant disruption, Butterfield explains that it's the blocked adaptation creating that fatigue, not the adaptation itself. Leeman points to fragmented, siloed responsibility. Butterfield says, well, distributed capability needs to follow the work, not the hierarchy. Where Leeman sees blurred accountability and drift, Butterfield proposes a chief purpose officer to illuminate alignment using real-time data. And finally, Leeman warns against serial projects dressed up as agility, while Butterfield counters with micro-change embedded as a totally natural daily rhythm. It all fits together like a giant puzzle.
Let's move to and see how this all builds together. Section 5, a coherent way forward. To really synthesize both of these perspectives, we have to start by empowering the front lines. First up, you absolutely must clarify the core question and method. Ask yourself, are you delivering a specific outcome or are you building adaptive capacity? Next, distribute authority to those closest to the work. Let them initiate adjustments naturally within clear boundaries. And step 3, treat micro-change as your primary rhythm. You've got to design systems where supplier requests or tiny customer tweaks embed directly into the daily workflow. Whatever you do, do not defer small adjustments until they pile up into a massive crisis. Beyond the front line, we also have to reshape governance. So step 4 means embedding governance as enablement, not just some retrospective external audit. Regulatory requirements should become your design parameters. And verification happens continuously through practice. Step 5 requires integrating informal networks into your formal systems, instead of just relying on them as some hidden backup plan, you know? That way, you actually capture their real-world learning. And ultimately, step 6, measure your success by workflow and learning speeds. Start tracking handover speed and rework loops right alongside your financial metrics. Because at the end of the day, savings confirm correction, but flow confirms design. Which leaves us with this final, truly provocative thought. Are we managing constant change? Or are we finally designing for continuous flow? Ron Leeman challenged us to stop accepting continuous change at face value. And Dr. Reg Butterfield showed us that the answer really lies in designing systems where adaptation requires no program, no champion, and absolutely no closure report. The work simply continues. So, take a hard look at your own organization's architecture. Does your structure actually support flow, or is it just creating more friction? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.